Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is well and keeping warm. I'm Tshoki and will be hosting the dialogue today. So we will converse in the first 30 minutes, which will be then followed by Q&A. So do stick around. For our theme, exploring social justice laws and its impact on Bhutanese society, we have a special guest, and he's someone who we have been pursuing for a very long time. With a master's in law from George Washington University, Sir Sonam Tshering is a seasoned lawyer and an academician, serving as an assistant professor at the 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀 School of Law. He is also an assistant dean and a member of numerous law school committees, including Climate Change Task Force member and editor of law journals. In the past, Sir has held pivotal positions, including assistant legal officer in Bhutan Narcotics Agency and legal advisor to both the Narcotics Control Board and the Tobacco Control Board. Sir has also won the Regional Directors Award during the 2012 World's No Tobacco Day from the Southeast Regional Organization at the World Health Organization. Sir has also served in the National Assembly Secretariat as a Parliamentarian Committee Secretary and a Legislative Officer. Sir is, I suppose he's indeed a man with many hats. He's also a certified legal practitioner and currently serves as a Chief Counsel for Druk Justice Legal Consultancy. Now, among his numerous contributions, what I admire most about Sir Sonam Tshering is his unwavering dedication towards enhancing legal literacy in the country through his renowned weekly legal column in 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀. Now, over the course of 4 years and without missing a single week, Sir has contributed to over 200 plus articles on various social issues as well as matters of justice. Sir Sonam Tshering, please, I'm more than happy to welcome you to Bhutan Dialogues, and we are indeed very delighted to have you with us today. With this, yes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Tshoki, for
Thank you,
inviting
sir.
me to the event.
Now, sir, there's so much to talk today. But to begin, could we reverse the gear a bit to your early years? Perhaps also to break some ice, we would like to know where you're from. We would like to hear about your parents, how your upbringing has been, and what were your key childhood experiences that shaped who you are today, sir. Over to you, sir.
Last, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody who are on social media as well as on Zoom. And I think just to introduce myself, I am from 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀𝗀. My name is Sonam Tshering. My dad is from 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀, I am from 𝗕𝗂𝘀, but I have been here throughout my life. I studied here in 𝗕𝗂𝘀 itself, from 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀 Primary School to 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. So most of my education was done in 𝗕𝗂𝘀. And in terms of my childhood, I would say that I lost my mom when I was very young. So I was brought up by my dad and my step mom, and probably I managed to get into school a little late, and that has had the opportunities for me to grow as well as disadvantages for me, as I had to by the time I finished my college, I was quite in today's, I think by today's measure, I would be very old. In terms of that, I think a lot of people, when you have single parents, or when your parents are no more, I think there seems to be a lot of problems in the life. I happens to take that as an opportunity to further my life's expectations, my life's ambitions, and I think I have been able to utilize all of my drawbacks and challenges to a positive thought and positive action, and I think that has brought me to where I am today. In particular, probably I would name one person. I think he's no more. He was a former Royal Advisory Councillor, Tshoki Zangmo, who actually encouraged my parents and helped me to enroll in the school. And then since then, he has encouraged me throughout his life till he expired. And I think that has really encouraged me to study well. And with motivation. So I think these are some of the basically how I have been brought up. So I am a very highly trained farmer. So which means I can, handle a lot of agriculture and farming, and that's because I think I brought up in a very rural setting in Paro, although Paro is considered as developed. And I also had the opportunity to, I think, supplement my parents' income with doing a lot of temporary jobs, and also try to compete in school activities to get prizes, not realizing that these experiences and those competitions would, give me additional advantage over my colleagues and my competitors in terms of shaping myself into a better person. So I would say that all of these, things that has helped me to become what I'm today.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your childhood experiences, and what an active childhood you seem to have to make you, I think, multi-skilled, not only a successful lawyer, but also perhaps very skilled farmer. And I think, sir, you're also a testament to the success of what a single parent can do. There is no excuse that you would have a single parent and things are not working out. And also our sincere respect to Sir Doji Gelson for nudging you to, or your guardian to put you to school. And this is, I think, our sincere gratitude goes out to individuals like himself as well. So I guess we are also interested, besides the childhood experiences that you mentioned, so we are also interested in knowing what inspired you to pursue a career in law, and in particular the motivations that may have directed you to teach law. What is that thing that made you choose this career path?
I think this is an interesting question. I don't know, for no reason or somehow when I was in primary school, I suddenly heard about a profession called lawyer. And since then, I have been fascinated. What is it all about? And I wanted to study law. And when I reached class 12, if I would have got a scholarship, I would have actually pursued law after class 12. Somehow I could not manage that. Then I went to pursue a Bachelor of Science in 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀 College. Of course, the science is another subject that I'm always interested in, and I completed my BSc. And when RCC announced that they would take in paralegal, which means that without law degree, they would take into PGDNL from other grounds, although I managed to get it through the RCC exam and was eligible for postgraduate diploma in public administration, I gave up that. And then although the RCC also warned that they will not promise that they will actually offer us to pursue law degree. But I said, okay, whatever is done. So they gave us 15 minutes to decide, and I decided to give up public administration because looking at my background of science, neither the law or the administration were close to what I have studied. So I decided to take science. I just decided to pursue PGDNL, and then I got my first posting was actually in Bhutan narcotics, and I think it was a blessing in disguise because that narcotics law had a substantial component on science. Without scientific background, that law is very, very complicated for any lawyer to interpret. And my added advantage, and that made my life much easier to understand and implement those laws. And then I went for my law degree, and finally I'm here as a lawyer, and I have no regrets so far. Whatever I thought would be correct seems to be correct till now. So I think, getting a law, now I realize that one important aspect as a lawyer one could imagine is that even if you don't practice law, one skill that lawyers possess is no matter whether you are rich, poor, or whether you are intelligent, everybody encounters problem in their life. And law is one where you are acquired a skill to deal with all kinds of problems, whether family matters, whether complex matters, whether business matters. So which means studying law always comes in handy as a automatic skill that can help you to resolve and address all of your problems to a large extent. So I think this has always been, I think this is something that everybody should actually have that skill to resolve a lot of problems without having to make it more complicated.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And we couldn't agree more. I mean, that you were meant to be here with the kind of impact that you're making on ground. Now let's just now dive into the theme for the session today. So when it comes to social justice laws, we understand there's like so much to cover. So it's impossible for us to touch upon everything today. But perhaps we could begin with one of the most important aspects, and that is also what you mentioned towards the end of your response, saying that law is something that everybody should know, and it's something that should be there as a general knowledge. But we know the reality is something different. Most of us, we don't even understand what our basic rights are. I mean, there has been instances where people find themselves confused about their rights and responsibilities in matters of justice. For example, just like a hypothetical example, like if a law enforcement agency were to arrest me suddenly, then I would not know my basic rights. What am I allowed? What am I not allowed? So would you kindly share with us some of the basic rights we have in terms, of the social justice that?
Uh, I think I totally agree with Tshoki here in terms of Bhutanese understanding law. We always think about the moment you talk about law, it's all about lawyers, and we tend to brush off. It's never talked outside the legal fraternity unless you have a serious case and then you want to pursue. Then you tend to discuss. Otherwise, I think law is one which is least bothered, least discussed. This also shows that although I don't have statistics to prove, but my observation indicates that there is a poor legal literacy among the Bhutanese population. No matter whether you are rich, whether you are employed, we have senior civil servants with almost very, very negligible knowledge on laws. We have people who have so much of wealth and so much of exposure with almost no knowledge on law and doesn't know what to do with when they are into problem. And I think that is one aspect the state, the government should actually, realize. And I think it's time that government should actually make people aware of their rights. I think as an individual myself, I can do only so much, but if we move as a community, I think it's going to be much easier. Now, if you look at, there are so many other laws, but one of the laws that impact a lot of us in terms of before we go to court is a law known as Civil and Criminal Procedure Code, which basically talks about how cases should be decided in the court. It provides a mechanism, a process in the court, which is very limited, to only legal fraternity, and also because that law seems to be little technical, so it's little difficult to understand. And one of the reasons, if you look at in terms of, let's say, arrest and detention, uh, in Bhutan, Bhutan's procedural law, unfortunately, fortunately, seems to have transplanted from the U.S. federal, procedural law, and that also means we have imported a Western legal transplant here, and that makes our life even much more complicated. And now, in terms of arrest, if you look at very simple things, we always hear about people getting detained in police station and then released in the morning, just detained for a night. We also hear about police frisking young people just because they are walking at night with some knives or, going in a group. The intention on the part of the law enforcement, I think, this cannot be questioned. It's always a bona fide, reason, very good intentions. But I think as a democratic nation, one important aspect we must all, uphold, and as emphasized by His Majesty, the fourth king, as well as His Majesty, the king, repeatedly, is a rule of law, which means that you must have basis, authorization of the legislature to conduct yourselves. And arrest is one common factor that really doesn't trigger the court itself. For example, if you are detained for a night and released in the morning for no reason, uh, police ought to give reason why you have been detained and what is the basis. In terms of arrest, there are two ways in Bhutan under the Bhutanese law where you can be arrested. One is known as cognizable offenses, which means police can arrest without warrant. For example, if somebody is creating nuisance, if somebody is, robbing somebody's house, or if the person is likely to, run away, then of course you can actually, arrest people. But not all other circumstances, every circumstances cannot be constituted without arrest warrant, which means that one aspect as a citizen you can ask is that you ask that question to those who are coming to arrest you. Identify yourself, show us proof that you are the authority. And second, tell me the reason why I'm getting arrested. And then if you think that you are arrested, which where you should not be arrested without warrant, you ask them to produce the warrant. And if you are arrested and if you are still detained without that, one of the ways is that you file a suit against those agencies in the court, particularly in the High Court, and then claim, file for an arbitrary detention or arbitrary arrest, and you can actually claim, compensations for torturing you. We will be discussing about civil liability law in a short while. So I think these are some of the things that I think people should be aware of. If you are detained, phone, for example, today I have been hearing that our police personnel immediately ask you to open your password, and then they start browsing your internet, everything inside. As an individual, I have written against those things. I think it would not be now right. And I would actually urge the legislatures to come up with a law where every mobile phone, if anybody wants to look at, needs the arrest warrant. Our phones contain every detail of us, from personals to private to business to officials to everything. And I don't think it should be advisable to give to anybody and just let them open everything. There are stories of people where some photos have been shared with other people. So I think law enforcement definitely, agencies definitely does have authority to look into the, the evidences. It is important that, citizens have the right to say to certain things as no, not everything. So I think these are some of the basic things that we need to learn about the criminal components. And I think, for example, police can detain a person without charging to court for 49 days for minor offenses and 108 days for major offenses without charging to court, just detain them so long as court actually allows them. So I think these are the important things that we need to learn, why you get detained, and you need to question.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I mean, I think my question was not so fair. I mean, we have the entire Civil and Criminal Procedure Code 2001 that needs to be translated into something that is consumable by the public. And then a lot of advocacy programs has to be done. Of course, again, just a shout out that we do respect the law enforcement agencies, and this Bhutan Dialogues is just to open conversation so that better and more efficient services and also the rights of the public are withheld. I would also want to move into this aspects of hiring a lawyer, because there's again very limited information at what stages should we hire a lawyer, and a lot of times what we see is that we see it's very common to see individuals seeking legal advice by representing themselves in lower courts, only to seek professional legal counsel when their cases reach the higher court. So I was just wondering, in such instances, what is your advice? Is this a good practice?
Yeah, so I think at the onset, I would declare that whatever I say here, or I state here, are just advocacy and awareness. It should not be taken as a legal advice by anybody else. I think legal advice can only be given in person in a professional manner. But just to give us an information, I would suggest people to actually look for a lawyer when your case actually starts or before your case starts at the lowest court. The reason is because I have seen a lot of people that they actually come to me and say that we lost miserably in the district court. Would you be able to help us in high court to win this case? And I look at those cases, and sometimes I find that they have missed the important evidences in the district court, or they have missed important facts to be submitted in the district court. And a lot of people think that, oh, this is just a Dungha court, it's a small court, high court, district court. I can do it myself. Or Supreme Court is too dangerous. I need a lawyer. I think that notion has to be removed. If you should hire, you should hire at the lower end for a couple of reasons. One reason, because you start your case. This is where you build your case. Organize all the evidences, all of your facts put together properly. analyzed and evaluated properly, and see the strength of your case and then file. And second, it is the lower courts are also known as trial courts. So which means their job is to actually evaluate and understand the entire facts of the case, examine every evidence, and then apply the law, and then come to the decision. The role of higher courts like High Court and Supreme Court is just to see if lower courts have made mistakes in applying the law, not the facts and evidences. Which means that if parties fail to submit evidences in lower court, they are not expected to be, submit the additional evidences in higher courts. There's no point in, appeal. The function of appeal is to rectify the application of errors in law by the lower courts. One, because lower courts have one judge, single judge. Dunga court has less experienced judge. High court has 3 judges in each bench minimum, with much more experience, which means you are likely to actually, it's like you are just going to first general doctor, and then you are going to more specialized doctor, and then you are going to specialized doctor to rectify the errors. And I think that process is there. So which means if the errors are seriously, if you are not submitted, or if you have never declared your disease to that lowest doctor, and then you go to specialist doctor and say that you have that disease, which means you have never been examined by the the lowest doctor. So I think same case with the judiciary. I would urge people to hire, lower lawyers at lower court than higher court. Higher court, I think the chances of getting your case reversed is like less than 5%, 10%, you can say maximum. It can be even 1% in most instances. So it's not going to be. It is a global, I think, established system that functions. It's not just with us, it's across the world.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Now that we have touched the law aspect, and in Zonko we call it 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀, right? We know that 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀, they are quite expensive, often making it unaffordable for many individuals. So I just wanted to perhaps flag, if sir knew the types of legal aid or services that are accessible to the general public. Moreover, what options are available for vulnerable populations who face, additional barriers in accessing legal assistance. So that's the first part. I would also want to, again, have the second part asked at the right away, because it's related to 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗻𝘂𝑚𝑖s. At times we have this, and this is an anecdotal experience that I've come across, and it's the unfortunate scenario where lawyers often, after receiving service charge, they have not provided the entire service, and at times they abscond midway of the court proceedings, unfortunately. So of course, for sure, we know what this is, what they're doing is wrong, but how do we end this kind of behavior? What systems are in place that you know of, or should be in place to mitigate and reduce the challenges associated with lawyer frauds? So the first is on the legal services that's available, and the second one is on the frauds.
Okay. Right to 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀 or right to legal counsel is a constitutional right, because access to justice is a fundamental to any kind of justice. It's like having a key to open the door of a justice. If you don't have the key itself, then you will never know what is inside. And to access that is, is a right to. So right to 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀 is based on that principle, fundamental principle, that everyone, who is a citizen of country, who is under the law, they all have the right, and that right sometimes cannot be accessed. One, because you yourself have no idea about how the law functions, which means you won't be able to represent yourself. You don't have other family members in Bhutan. The ways of engaging
So I think I've lost you. All right, I think we have lost sir. So perhaps we just wait out, and yeah, I'm sure he's going to join soon. Yes. Sir, we lost you in between.
Okay. Sorry, maybe I think I have probably some
Sure.
network. Yeah. So Right to 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀 is one important aspect that it's like a key to the justice, and hiring 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀 is not as cheap as one can think. Not because I think it lawyers make it difficult, because you could also think about medical. If medicine is privatized, how expensive it's going to be. One reason is because I think investment people make in becoming a lawyer or becoming a doctor. Here in Bhutan, fortunately, we all are given free education by the government on most instances, but there are.
I think we lost him again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. So perhaps would it help if we put the video off, or would that be a turn off for the audience?
Yeah. So one reason is because so 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀 spent a lot of money, and that is investment is made, and they would like to recover it. I think these are the truths that we must, I think, recognize and accept. So that's one area. The other one is there is a substantial amount of time that is required to study these cases. You just can't go and write a petition and file in the case in a court and say that this is it. Uh, if you have to have a professional lawyer, you will have to spend a lot of time in doing that. So I think that's one reason why 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀 could be expensive. And of course, one is the competitiveness. When you're monopoly, you will try to make it more expensive. If you have more 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀, it should go down. And so in terms of that, legal aid will help in that context. And that has been there for a long time. And but it has not been instituted properly. Now, recently, under the leadership of Her Majesty, Her Royal Highness Sonam Tshering, Bhutan National Legal Institute has established and institutionalized this legal aid center. I'm not very sure how many people are aware of this one, but they have instituted this, and it is well in function. A number of lawyers are taking cases under the legal aid component, which means government is paying on behalf of the parties, and the amounts are very, very small, just to cover the travel and basic necessity, basic expenditure for the lawyer, and not to make a profit out of those. And JSW Law is also providing legal aid services under the clinical courses, which is experiential learning by the clinical courses. Currently, I think they are providing one case, but that is subject to availability of the clinical courses, because we have number of modules. So it depends on when the module comes in. The other one is it also depends on the funds that we can secure. So our portion is very small, but BNLI has a much more a bigger for the entire nation. And there are requirements to fulfill that one. So that's one component. The third component we can look at is we call it pro bono. So pro bono means lawyers, by Bar Council rules, you are required to give some kind of free legal services. It's called pro bono. And all practicing lawyers are supposed to give that. So which means in this case, if you are really aggrieved and you don't have the money to hire a lawyer, you can actually approach lawyers, or you can approach Bar Council of Bhutan. It is located, the Bhutan National Legal Institute is located in the premises of the Supreme Court, whereas Bar Council is located in the Office of the Attorney Generals. So you can approach there, and then they may be able to help you with that one. So these are some of the things, in terms of legal aid. So it is there. It is available both in civil and criminal matters, as long as you actually fulfill certain criteria, such as your economic status, your ability to hire, or your knowledge on the law itself. If you are already a legal expert and then you just don't have money, then I don't think, it may be like you may get some kind of other forms. And not just representation in the court. Legal aid also means they will help you to write petitions, not just going to court. So not necessarily going to courts, others also given. Now, on the second component of lawyers, sometimes I think this one, I would not say just lawyers. I think this is across all groups of people, of all groups of professionals. You can see medical in terms of doctors. So medical negligence is one aspect where doctors are held accountable. Similarly, engineers are there, accountants are there, and lawyers are no exceptions. There are lawyers, and there are already cases in Bhutan where lawyers have not been doing their job as required, and some have never contacted their client once they got their money, and the client has no idea where the case is gone. Some people have, even, there are instances and stories of, I have not seen in reality, but there are stories of selling evidences to other parties just to, so that you get more money. And sometimes they ask you that if I win this case, how much will you give me? A land, a property. These are all considered as serious ethical violations under the 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗃 Act of Bhutan. Under the 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗃 Act, I would recommend every party who is, seeking a professional service of a lawyer to sign an agreement, and that agreement should be with the lawyers who will actually provide that, and you can get a copy of that, where it says that whatever fees is charged, it is not subject to outcome. The lawyer services fees are charged for services, not for the outcome. Outcome would be based on how the court would interpret, evidence is submitted, facts argued, nothing to do with how much fees you are charged. If you keep that as a basis, then lawyers can resort to all kinds of unethical and frauds, because they want to win the case in any case and then earn so much of money. So I think that is why the fees must be agreed at the onset of your case, and don't give anything even if you win. If you just want to give as a gift, that's a different story. But if lawyers actually ask that, because we you know, it says host has asked you to start your video. Okay, I'll
No.
just later. Yeah,
Yes.
so I think these are some of the things. And the third one I want to tell is, if you have any problem with the lawyers, a lot of our people have no idea where to go. Now my lawyer has run away with money and I have no idea where to go. Please go to Bar Council, file a complaint against lawyers in Bar Council. Bar Council has established a disciplinary committee, and if it is not a criminal case, they will deal, and including suspension of licenses, revoking of licenses, cancellation of licenses. If it is criminal, they will then hand it over to Royal Bhutan Police and they will be prosecuted like any other person. So I think not many people are aware of this one.
Yes. Sir, if you could turn on your video, perhaps you could try that once more. Yes. Thank you, sir, for the information and the clarification as well. I think the Legal Aid Center, which is functioning, and also the clinical courses at the JSW school, and also the pro bono services. I think I'm very happy that at least there is something that the vulnerable population can go for legal assistance. Let's move on to the civil suits, the Civil Liability Act, which was recently enacted. I'm not sure whether, again, I feel the general public might not be aware of such an act. Could you please provide an overview of what this act entails and the right it grants to the public?
Okay, so Civil Liability Act is a complete Western transplant. We call it legal transplant. So it's actually a imported idea from the West, and this idea is not bad actually. We just need to know how to use this idea properly, because through this idea, democracy is strengthened, accountability of the powerful are fixed at that point. And that's one important aspect this Civil Liability Act provides. And Civil Liability Act, the other aspect of Civil Liability Act is, very unfortunately, if you don't have a lawyer, you won't be able to file a case under Civil Liability Act, because the law is so complex. Even our parliamentarians had serious issues of not understanding the components within that Civil Liability Act. So that's one unfortunate aspect, I think. But having said that, there are avenues to get it through. And there are so many aspects of that Civil Liability Act. And one important aspect is to hold these agencies accountable, the government agencies, the state agencies, corporates, and other powerful, entities. Now, for example, we had stories of, young infants, crushed under hume pipes by contractors not, putting properly, and people falling into potholes, or falling from the wall collapsed and women died. Electricity pole collapsed and somebody lost their life. In the hospital, in just a few years ago, we had infants lost their life because the infection control was not properly managed, not because of lack of doctors. We had a patient who died possibly due to lack of proper medical care during COVID in 𝗕𝗃𝘁. And all of these agencies have been able to escape, without having any accountability till now. And with this law, it's not going to be like that. If we can trigger this law, it will have impact. And that is one aspect. I'll just give you an example of how this law will apply. Now, for example, let's say if one person dies in a public building, and let's say this building lacked safety, basic safety things that put in place. And if that person dies by this current law, it can attract that agency to pay. I estimated it says it's around damages maximum up to 15 years of minimum wage. I put it as 165 for, which is currently practiced by courts in Bhutan. It comes around 900,000. And then I looked at then the kids and kins are also eligible for funeral rights up to 49 days for 7 people. Then in addition to that, they can also recover legal expenses. In addition to that, if there are, because now family goes through mental trauma and all of this, right? So under that context, they could recover up to like 800,000. And I estimated at current rate, if somebody dies as a result of, non-compliance to safety measures by anybody, including contractors, including TOMDE, including municipalities, agencies, it could, including hospitals, medical negligence, all of those could attract 1.6 million to 2 million very easily, in addition to funeral and other expenditures, medical expenditures. So initially, when the law was passed by the National Council, we calculated it was coming around 100,000 and 100 million or 90 million. And we thought, because Bhutan is a welfare state, right? So if we put too much on that, the state could become bankrupt. And as a result, I think the National Assembly has, I think lightened this one. It is broad, but I think still much better than earlier ones. One drawback of this law, this a major drawback of the public accountability is they have put excuse saying that if there is insufficient fund allocated to that, and as a result person dies because of non-compliance to safety, then they are not liable, which I feel that this could be used and abused, and agencies could deliberately allocate less money to safety and then later on claim that there was no budget, and then as a result. So I think these are very, very, I think bad example. I think we should rectify all these errors. I was watching TikTok, and there's a man in TikTok who is in the Canada, and he says that, see, he actually shows on his TikTok saying that, see how what kind of precautions these people have taken, to give a medicine, or what kind of instructions they have given. And I'm saying because their civil liability law, or they call it law of torts, is very strong. They are not just doing for sake of doing, but they want to save millions, because they could lose in billions and millions. The Johnson's and Johnson's baby powder is one example where last year in one case in New York, they lost $25 billion to the people, out of which 3 billion was paid to lawyers. So if you look at those, they definitely do it. And here, I think looking at current practice of relaxation with everybody and laziness, I think we need to improve this one much better. But I think this law can be only enforced by citizens. Agencies will be happy to have this law. Will never be implemented if we citizens don't. So I think some point of time, citizens need to actually make use of this law.
Yes. I mean, definitely, we do hope that such an act would help build better safety measures, but also help ensure greater accountability. But as Sir mentioned, we're also cognizant that it can be something that can only be pursued by people who has the means to hire Japanese, for instance. So there's, I guess, still room for improvement. And also the clause that you mentioned on insufficient fund, I think that there's also this high chance of abuse. Now, I will ask one more question, and then we'll open for Q&A. And the question is, again, something to do with social media that's so much ingrained in our lives, ingrained in the society. there's while there's no denying that the impact that social media has on our lives, what do you feel is the impact of social media on the justice system currently
I think
in Bhutan?
so. One good thing about Bhutan is Bhutan does not actually prohibit any of the social media, unlike all our neighbors. All of our neighbors either tend to eliminate one or other social media out of their country. But Bhutan has decided to have all of this media, whether it comes from our neighbors such as China or whether it comes from US. That's a good sign. The other good sign is all of Buddhists, huge number of Buddhists are on social media, which means that there is a huge exchange of information, and that is a good idea. And everybody knows what's happening around. On the hindsight, I think there is also a huge problem of having too much of information and not able to filter which one is correct and which one is wrong. And in terms of justice, this is a serious problem, serious caution that we must take it. One, we call it as a media trial. Before somebody gets convicted, before somebody even goes through trial, in the eyes of public, you already, presume that that public is a guilty. And that, I think, really puts, trigger on how judges decide. After all, judges are all human beings. They can be pressured by public. It's not that they are infallible, and they are they are human beings, and which means they will also be pressured by public, and this can have a negative impact in how decisions are made. And there are enough studies being carried out across the world on media trial and how it impacts in terms of decision making of the judges. And and not just that, in Bhutan, small country, we are a very small close knit society. Their family members, their relatives go through so much of trauma before they even are known whether they are guilty or not. So I think these are serious issues that is there. The other one is a lot of our mainstream media, current mainstream media is doing very poorly in terms of looking at critical aspects. We call media as a fourth state. We call them as a watchdog. But I tend to describe them as a post office, mouthpiece of the government, of the states, of a lot of, not much is there. And as a result, public are forced to rely on social media, because they think that is much more reliable, unfiltered. Unfortunately, this also spreads, aggravates the spreading of dangerous rumors. It could also be disinformation, misinformation, and then so this can create unnecessary issue. The other one is that uh, sometimes the cases, let's say one party is a very social media savvy and other is not. The social media savvy can go there and then start, putting all of the things that is. And unfortunately, a lot of people tend to buy that. And Bhutanese, by nature, I think, very gullible. So we think that is correct. And the fault is also with the judiciary, because by law and by practice across the globe, all judicial decisions should be on the public domain. Public should be able to see all of the decisions what they make, except a few exceptions such as national security, privacy of children. But otherwise, all of the decisions should be on publicly, available. And in our case, also the law does require. Since 2011, and this is 2023, we hardly see any judgments on any of the judiciary websites, which means that nobody has idea how this case was decided. If that party says that the judge has been biased, public will consider that judge as biased, because there is no other information to verify whether that is true or not. So I think this also, I think, distorts and diminishes public confidence in the judiciary itself. So I think it is important now that judiciary should reform, and they should also make their decisions available to public, so that public understands how decision was taken, and actually not suffer as a result of social media. They tend to suffer as a result of social media because their things are all inside and nobody knows what is happening. So even the great judges are suffering. Honest judges are suffering. Honest legal, because few people just make stories, and then as a result it circulates all across social media, and then some people go to court and say that, yeah, that is very true, whatever I said is untrue. And I think these are things that we need to be careful about social media, and it does cause us so much in terms of, I think, justice.
Yes, thank you, sir. We'll move on to the questions. there are a couple of questions in the chat box, but I would also like to give opportunity to the attendees on Zoom. If you had any reactions or questions, do unmute. Meanwhile, please raise your virtual hand so that I know. There's one question, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. To what extent do social justice laws in Bhutan address systemic issues of discrimination and inequality? And what strategies are being employed to promote inclusivity and equal access to opportunities, especially youths in conflict?
Now, I think in terms of laws, we have a lot of laws that takes care of a number of issues, affecting youth, affecting women, affecting all kinds of vulnerable groups. I think it's a matter of how, as a state, we actually strategize. It also involves NGOs, the civil society organizations, to what extent our civil society organizations are active in terms of engaging with the government, with the academic institutions, other institutions to actually bring in. For example, if I give you a simple example, let's say drug substance abuse, right? The law has, since its enactment, law requires that there is adequate rehabilitation and treatment centers across the country. And today you go and see how many are there and how many young people are arrested. If the law says that there must be social reintegration programs initiated across the country. I have not seen, I have worked there. We never received any funds to do those things. And I have been observing this for many, 10, 15 years. We have not seen any such, promises from political parties that if we come to power, we will provide these opportunities to young people who are in conflict with law, and we reform them. All of them has, the consistent governments have instituted task force to, arrest young people, incarcerate them at many instances, or at least, take them to detention. And then and some of them go to rehabilitation. They come back with no social support, with no social reintegration programs, and they are, back to square tomorrow. And I think these are the simple examples that we can think about. And this applies to a lot of other youth related problems. So the laws is there. I think is a matter of how strategic we are and how committed we are in, I think, ensuring that inclusivity, non-discrimination, all of those.
That's nice. And just before, yes, I'll share the space with Namge Doji. If you can come, please jump in.
Thank you, Tshoki and Sonam. I think it's quite interesting that you touched on a range of things here. I'd just like to add something on, I think what has been discussed till now is looking more towards solutions, once the problems have happened. But perhaps we should also look at how the laws are made in the first place, whether we were being inclusive, in the lawmaking process. And in terms of the procedures, I think those are already there in the form of legislative impact assessments, which is a requirement before a law is being drafted, things like that. I think a lot of focus needs to be put in those. Also, resources have to be allocated in that area. I think that is one area that has been missing, and we have tried to solve a lot of our social issues through by providing legal means, which I think shouldn't be the case. So I just wanted to add to what Sonam was adding till now.
Thank you, Namge. So would you like to react on what he mentioned about the process of lawmaking in the country?
I think Namgi sir has already made, I think, very clear emphasis on how we should engage. I think there is inherent, I think, system that is there because a lot of laws are drafted by one or two lawyers in agencies, and then it gets through in most instances, and it's not really deliberated much at public length. The other one, I think, is also because there are no researches being carried out before law is enacted, whether this law is required and what kind of things would happen, right? So we first enact the law and implement, and then disaster goes. And the other one, I think, unfortunately, I'm an academic, person, and I feel that is one of the aspects that Bhutan as a country is not able to take advantage is the studies that is carried out. If it is in favor of the government or the state who is into this kind of lawmaking, they would take it as a expert like paper. But if it is critical about that, then they generally dismiss as like a personal kind of academic venture and nothing to do with us. I think these are some of the things that I think we need to look at, and in the current system, I think the research and data and all of these are very important aspects, which is not that much taken into when we are making laws.
Yes. There's one more question. I will just stick with the second part because the first was already answered. So what challenges exist in ensuring the widespread understanding of social justice laws in the country? So why do public in general have limited understanding of?
I think I actually, said this before. Definitely one is lack of legal literacy. You don't know your rights and you listen to whoever tells and then believe that is correct. That is, I think, major. So as I think Tshoki has already indicated that the government, the NGOs, every one of us must create awareness about the basic rights. I think that is one lacking. So that is one of the, I think, major problems that people, whatever they see on social media, they actually believe because there are no other avenues to verify those things. So I think that could be the major hurdle at the moment. And of course, resources is one. Even inability to hire professional lawyers, confused stage. I think fear in the system. All of this, there are so many contributing factors. But I think on onset, I think lack of literacy would be number one, at least from my observation.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Le. Let me, since there are no more questions, let me circle back to the part on social media and justice law. So we often witness, as I also mentioned, and you already touched parts of it. We often witness individuals, launching attacks, sometimes personal attacks on social media platforms, often using anonymous accounts, and these occurrences actually are a daily reality. And we know that in a closely knit society, even a minor incident, whether through post or video shares, can have very significant repercussions, at times causing regional divisions. So what are your thoughts on this? Are there any laws in place to protect individuals from such behavior? And I do also understand that there's this ongoing debate with the principles of freedom of speech versus the privacy of rights, the privacy rights, sorry, concerning social media. So how do we actually strike a balance between these two to have a society where there's like a freedom of expressing constructive criticism, but at the same time, it's not at the expense of their privacy?
I think there are so many things to discuss under this one single question, and maybe I'll just briefly discuss first on the anonymity. I think in the recent times, the anonymous accounts has increased, and in very recent times, anonymous groups have increased, which in a way indicate various, I think, kinds of things for a society. And it has its own merits and demerits. And from my evaluation, I would say there are more demerits than merits in terms of anonymity. One of the reasons there could be people they just want to hide and express what they want, genuinely, share things. So and they don't want to come in front. For example, you have this places called Confession Thimpu, and sometimes they just joke and then you think it is true, and so sometimes that could be one. The other one could be because we had instances of where civil servants faced consequences for posting on social media, and this means that the others are worried that they would be the next target, so they try to go anonymous and write. The
Yes.
other could also be because some people want to take vengeance and revenge against other people. And one of the ways is to do as anonymity. So you are anonymous, you don't know. Unfortunately, if you have to go by law and if you go by state, resources, nobody is free from that. Anybody can unmask you. Digital footprints cannot be erased. It is permanently there. If the state wants, the state can go spend money and find out who you are. The state has not been doing that one, at least to my knowledge. But on the hindsight, the other side, I am a very, social media, kind of a social media user. I use all kinds of social media. I'm a very active on social media. And I have been critical about a number of things that is happening in the country, not because I have bad intentions. I thought these criticisms, if taken positively, could bring in solutions, could bring improvements. But I have to be honest, I think. I had to delete my post. I had to remove my comments. And I have, been getting interferences from the state agencies, elected members, you name it. From the highest kind of like senior civil servants, trying to pressure me to stop from writing what I write. And I think that is a very dangerous, situation that we are in. And I analyze those things. I have never given up. So I do it today also and every time. But I realized that that could be nothing to do with actual system. These are the people, one, because they are not able to control their ego. So they have that ego, and when somebody says there needs to be improvement, they are not willing to accept that. Second, as a society, we are very poor in accepting critical evaluations, criticisms, positive criticisms, forget about negative. Positive criticisms, the moment they say you are, if you have can do this way, I think we are not. So as a culturally, we are very, very susceptible to getting hurt. Moment you see somebody that is not in line with what you want to say, right? So I think that could be one. And it could also be because authorities, if they say we have made mistakes, then we have to be accountable. And they don't want to take accountability. And the best way is that you try to, either stop that person from doing or punish that person or do something else. And I think, but I'm optimistic that this should go away eventually. As the democracy nurtures in the country, it should go away. And I think otherwise it's going to be a serious problem. Now, when you're anonymous, if you look at some of the anonymous groups, there are so much of hatred, very divisive statements given, and then everybody is, hundreds of people are going on that post and trying to defend their own region, own race, own, ethnicity, own language. And I think these are very dangerous things. And I feel that if our government or the state agencies can accept open criticism, they will die on their own. Anonymous military will die their own death. You don't have to be anonymous. You look at any of these liberal democracies like US, Australia, you can look at UK. There are hardly any anonymous because everybody can come front and, confront people and then, tell and post and write whatever they want. So there is no point in going to this, anonymous. And if we don't do that one, then I think it's going to be a very serious problem. It is, if you are a public figure, I think you must expect that you will face public criticism. And your ability to handle this public criticism will show your leadership skills. If you are very poor in, handling this criticism, obviously, I think there are issues with them. So I think these are some of the things that I think we need to look at properly. And for me, I actually, encourage people to be more open with your identity, push forward rather than hiding, because in digital footprint, you cannot hide. You will be unmasked.
Yes, thank you so much. I think, yes, accepting open criticism, whether it's positive or negative, it's a skill or it's a principle that we need to embrace at an individual level as well as a societal, or whether it's government or private sector. It's across the board. It's a whole of government, whole of nation approach that we need to adhere to. Just moving on, it's just transitioning into and something that we spoke earlier about as well around youth, which is it's always it's a topic that's always close to my heart. We are already witnessing instances of cyberbullying and Sometimes we already know this smartphones are increasingly replacing babysitters. We are potentially facing a generation that's addicted to social media. One generation ago, our threats were physical, in person, but now we know the threats are looming virtually, social medias now. So, and this works to their advantage. So what legal measures are in place or should be in place to protect the youth, especially from cyberbullying and related issues from your point of view?
I think these are emerging issues at unprecedented level. So it is growing at the rate that we can't even imagine. The young people on cyber, and then with too many options of social media, it poses more vulnerabilities. And this also means social media has its own advantages. People learn, people exchange, get information. There are so much of advantages, but there are also so much of demerits and disadvantages to that. Unfortunately, if you look at as a law in Bhutan, we don't have any comprehensive regulation or law they could take care of this. For example, say cyberbullying, right? And let's say social media addiction. I have not seen any document of the government where strategizing how we deal with this kind of situation. It is a reality. It is happening. We yet on the legal front and legal, we are still, I think, much behind. We don't realize that, on the one side, we are all pro technology. We have seen that so-called as 𝗕𝗵𝘂𝘁𝘀𝗀 is even used, introduced in the primary level, which means people are learning about computers at primary level. Then why not create this awareness at primary level? Why not Ministry of Education come up with a regulation that every school must have comprehensive literacy awareness programs for young people on what kind of social media they should use, what kind of things they should not do. And we are waiting for some serious disasters happening in schools and elsewhere, and then we come up with, I think that's always too late. And so I think is a Minister of Education, one priority Minister of Education should now look at this, and how do we regulate this technology use. Now, for example, after the pandemic, a lot of schools have been using and Telegram, WeChat, WhatsApp to assign homeworks for students at home. Parents are not able to control our children because they have to do this homework. And children are so smart that to do a half an hour homework, they take like 2 hours. How do we then control? Who is at fault? Is it the parents? Is it the children? Is it the school policies that is there? So I think this has to be looked at properly. Other one is social media addictions and cyberbullying, mental trauma. Do we have any kind of centers, institutions that looks after this, provides this kind of services? We don't have anybody. So I think these are serious things that we need to look at. I think it deserves a comprehensive legal mechanism to address this one. And countries such as Europe and a lot of developed countries are doing that one. If we are for pro technology, we are talking about all of those components. I think we must actually come up with regulations at appropriate, at the earliest. I think we are only late already now. And these are never political manifestos because young people never vote, possibly. And that should not be the case. I think political parties and political candidates must look at these issues more seriously, rather than just constructing bridges and motorable roads in the rural area. They are important, but young people protection of our young people are more important.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much, sir. We are a bit behind time. I'm just looking for any questions or if there are any from those who are attending on Zoom. So I don't see any hands.
Okay, so maybe I'll just add one more on the AI component.
Right.
Now, in terms of use of AI, the China has come up with a number of regulations on how to regulate AI processes. European Union is coming up with a comprehensive one. It's going to be, I think, approved in April. They have already been approved by the European Council and Parliamentary Committee. One major issues that Bhutan could face is under the AI in terms of misuse is they call technology called as deep fake, which is where you doctor videos and where you more photographs and and they have already found that a lot of adult sites are use deepfake to portray other people, and this can be done with very cheap softwares. And I don't know how many of our young people are aware of these things. You just need one or two photos on social media, and that can be converted to porn sites, where your face could be put to somebody else and circulate in social media, where all of them would say that it's you. How can it not be you? And the scientific studies and the recent developments have found out that some of them are so good that only the technically qualified people could actually find out it's fake,
Yes.
which we never talk about, which we never advocate, which we never raise awareness. And then the children, young people, if they find this one, they could get into suicide mode. They could commit suicide at any time, and with no reason. Nobody would even know about that, and everybody would actually, Bhutanese would actually understand this one, not knowing these technologies. There are voice, where you can just borrow somebody's voice and use it at that voice. And I think these things, I think we need to really talk in terms of technology in the society to understand, because our children are very vulnerable with no guidance from the school, no policies from the state, and very, very poor awareness among the parents. I think that's one, unfortunately, we all of our parents are on TikTok, but how aware are we on the vulnerability of TikTok and all of these technologies? Only God knows. We really don't know about those things. So I think we need to talk about these things more, I think, openly and more frequently.
Could not agree more. So I mean, there is a widespread adoption of AI, and across sectors, it's become a buzzword, and every industry, even in Bhutan, seems to be engaged in some form of AI projects. So in light of this trend, it becomes very imperative that we establish at the sooner than later, establish an AI ethics laws for protection, especially geared towards our children. Namge, would you like to come in? I see your hand raised. Namge, is that your?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Okay. I just wanted to add, I think a lot of people tend to sort of indicate or use laws as a tool to solve our social problems. I think that should stop first. We should already know what our solutions for our problems are at a societal level. And only if there is a real need for laws to be put in place, then after, I think, a thorough consultative process, I think that should be looked at as a last measure of resort and not as a tool. I think a lot of examples from past, especially in our domestic context, indicates that we have tried to put laws, to solve our social problems, which in fact has created more problems than it be a solution. So I think to really put laws on the table, I think that should be really thought through properly. And I always say that we should already know what the solutions are as a human being rather than the lawyer. And then only if there's a need, then we go for law. That's what I wanted to add. Thanks.
Thank you, Namge. Yes, couldn't agree more. I mean, you need to be a rational human being first, and then lawyer second. We have come to the end of the session, and this is a question I take the liberty to pose to every speaker. Is there a book that has significantly altered Sir's perspective of life on life, and a book that Sir would recommend as a must-read to our listeners?
First of all, I think I must confess that I'm not very good book reader. I'm more into that shorter pieces, and I tend to read most of the things very technical component. But I read a book called 48, I think, Powers of Law, Laws of Power. I think it's written by Robert Greene. That book, I think, particularly for elder people, it will be very good for us to learn because it's based on a well-researched skills based of how you can actually get it through the life in challenging times. Of course, it has its own drawback. That book does have a drawback in terms of, mistrusting your friends and, how to, get it things done competitively over the others. But I think this is I think, realistic book that one can, even if we can adopt one or two things that can really help us in resolving issues and a lot of things. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today, and our sincere gratitude for sharing your wisdom. I mean, so much was shared. I mean, where do I even begin? You touched upon Civil Liability Act and the civil and the criminal procedure, and both of which requires, I guess, intensive and rigorous advocacy. And it's a whole of nation approach. It's not only the state of government, but it's also the CSOs, NGOs, and also the general public who have a role in making social justice available for all. Please continue your efforts in improving our legal knowledge, as you have done in the past 4 years, and know that they are greatly appreciated. And we do hope that some of the recommendations that you've made in the past 1.5 hours, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 15 minutes, will be acknowledged by the relevant stakeholders, by the relevant agencies, and put into action in due course. That's my sincere prayer, and the sincere prayer from 𝗲𝗏 Foundation as well. Thank you so much, sir, once again. And thank you, as always, to our audience for your active participation. And yes, until next time, please stay engaged and take care. Thank you so much.